So welcome back to the next installment of Moonotheism, where I'm exploring the Yemeni and Babylonian pagan background and early history of proto-Islam. We ended the last episode by discussing how the Sirah teaches that Muhammad's companion met Jesus, and Jesus advised Muhammad through his companion, through a message delivered to his companion, that he would be the messenger, the apostle, the prophet, to bring the true religion of Abraham, to bring the true religion, because apparently Jesus must have failed. And Jesus was waiting for Muhammad to bring this. Make of that what you will. Please see the last episode if you want to have a recap on that. Otherwise, just read what's on the screen and that'll be made clear to you. Now, we're looking at the term Hunafa. So the term Hunafa, we discussed in the previous episode, so have a look at that. That's about 16 or 20 minutes long. So the Hunafa Christians in Syria and Hijaz. The source here is What Are the Sacred Roots of Islam and the Planned Modern Islamic Society by Jamil Efara. Arab Christians, as most Arab tribes in Hijaz and Syria, were Christians. Al-Yaqubi says the Arab tribe of Qada came to Syria, and Tanuk ben Malik was their first king to rule Syria. He became a Christian and was appointed a king by the Roman emperor. It's very interesting we've got Ben Malik, because there's been a great deal of discussion from, especially on Jay's channel, about the Abd al-Malik. And I've mentioned earlier that Abd al-Malik is a title. It is not a name, right? So Malik refers to the king. Now, if you are the king, you are the slave of no one. Now, if you take on the title, the slave of the Malik, the slave of the king, this is derived from the earlier Yemeni title, the Muqarrib. And the Muqarrib was the slave of the god, the prime deity. So the Abd al-Malik, the king, the emperor, is the slave of the prime deity. So Abd al-Malik is a title of someone who has taken on the role of pleasing and serving their prime deity. Just as Muhammad becomes the servant of Allah, right? Abdullah. That's exactly what that is. But in this case, as I said, it's titular. It is not just a name. Now, al-Masudi states, al-Masudi is also the one, I believe, that tells us that Muhammad spoke both Arabic and Ethiopic. Those are the two languages that he is conversant in, interestingly enough. So the tribe of Wadat Saleh al-Sham came to Syria after Qada and conquered Tanuk. She became Christian, and she was crowned to rule the Arabs in Syria by the Roman emperor. The third Arab tribe, Hassan, came to Syria. They became Christians and ruled Syria until the coming of Islam to Syria. So this would explain the presence of an Assyrian church in Eastern Arabia. And of course, you had these Syriac influences, these within places like Nazarenes and all across Arabia. So Christianity was present, which is why also you have these ancient inscriptions from the early 4th century, from the 300s, describing Jesus, describing worship of Christ in Arabia. What's interesting is this, in this box here, Christians of Syria used to call the Nazarenes of Bani Israel the tribe of Israel. That would be the Jews, right? The Nazarenes of Bani Israel, Hunafa, plural of Hanif, which is an Aramaic term which denotes the deflection of that group from the true Christian religion of the Syrians. So these would most likely be Messianic Jews. However, these would be heretical Messianic Jews. This implies they were Hunafa, they were pagans or heretics. Remember, Hunafa can mean pagans or heretics. In this case, this would refer to heretics. Muhammad Qud Ali says numerous Arab tribes came to Al-Sham or Syria and shared the control of Assyria with the Roman emperors. The most famous among them was Hassan in the south, and so on and so on. So keep this in mind here, that the Nazarenes, these wayward Jews, were considered to be pagans by the Christians. And by the same token, the early Muslims were called Hunafa by the Jews and the Christians for being pagans and for being heretics. Keep that in mind and just add that to the pile of evidence that we're collecting. Let me continue. Let's look at Guillaume's The Life of Muhammad. I'll just move that down so you can see that. Right. 4 men who broke with polytheism. Now they speak here of, find for yourselves a religion, they said, for by Allah, you have no religion. So they went their several ways in the land, seeking the Hanafiya, the religion of Abraham. Waraka attached himself to Christianity and studied its scriptures until he had thoroughly mastered them. Ubaydullah went on searching until Islam came. Then he migrated with the Muslims to Ethiopia, taking with him his wife, who was a Muslim. Habiba, when he arrived there, he adopted Christianity, parted from Islam, and died a Christian in Abyssinia. So these men were looking for the original religion. Remember, some of these men had rejected Judaism, rejected Christianity as not the original religion of Abraham. We know that the original religion of Abraham was Sabaean paganism, which was moon worship, which was derived from Babylonian moon worship. Now, Zayd had determined to leave Mecca to travel about in search of the Hanafiya, the religion of Abraham. Okay, fascinating. Then he went forth seeking the religion of Abraham, questioning monks and rabbis until he had traversed Al-Mosul and the whole of Mesopotamia. Then he went to the whole of Syria till he came to a monk on the high ground of Balqa. This man, it is alleged, was well instructed in Christianity. Alleged. He asked him about the Hanafiya, the religion of Abraham. Now remember, Abraham was a pagan. Then he became effectively the first Jew, if I have that correct. He decided to follow the God Yahweh. So he left his pagan religion behind, but these people were looking for the original religion of Abraham, which was pillar worship. And I will discuss that in length as we go through the series. The monk replied, "You are seeking a religion to which no one today can guide you. But the time of a prophet will come forth from your own country, which you have just left, has drawn near. He will be sent with the Hanafiya, the religion of Abraham." Okay, well, fine. So stick to it, for he's about to be sent now, and this is his time. How convenient. Now, Zayd had sampled Judaism and Christianity and was not satisfied with either of them. So understand the Sirah, the Gospels of Muhammad, what they call the biographies, but really the Gospels, are a polemic against Christianity and an apologetic for Islam. Interestingly, while they supposedly revere Jesus, you know that they quite literally demonize the Christian Jesus. They view with utter disrespect. They demote the Christian Jesus. They promote Muhammad to the status of a deity within the Sirah. I've covered that in other episodes on my channel on the Sirah. However, let's see what they do with Abraham, because supposedly they respect Abraham as the founder of their religion, one of the first Muslims. Of course, in Islam, Khadija is the first Muslim, Muhammad's the first Muslim, Abraham is the first Muslim, Adam is the first Muslim, and I guess others are the first Muslims. So multiple people can all be first. Makes perfect sense if it's Islam. But let's have a look at how they treat Abraham, what they've done with Abraham. So Abraham was originally called Abram, the Ivri, right? Now, Ivrit is a Hebrew word, right? And of course, in the Arabic, they've used the term Ifrit, right? Ivrit, Ifrit. Abram the Ivrit, from the Hebrew, means to cross over from the other side, to cross over from the other side of the river, or a descendant. So it can have a literal meaning, to cross over from the other side, or someone who is a descendant. Abraham received news that his cousin Lot had been taken away as a prisoner of war. A fugitive brought the news to Abram the Hebrew, Avram ha-Ivri. That's in Genesis 14:13, and there came one that had escaped and told Abram the Hebrew, right? So now biblical scholar Nahum Sadna concluded that Hebrew was really an ethnic designation akin to Canaanite and Moabite. Theories abound. By the time of King David, about 3,000 years ago, the term the Hebrew had largely disappeared. For most of recorded history, the descendants of Abraham the Hebrew were known as Jews. So therefore, Abraham effectively, he's a Jew. He is the first Jew. Let's leave it at that, right? Now, I want to introduce the word Chthonian, of or relating to the deities, the spirits and beings dwelling under the earth. In Greek mythology, Chthonian refers to beings that inhabit the underworld, considered to be the dark, shadowy counterparts of the Olympians. The Olympians are, I think, the Roman gods, Roman pantheon. Let's have a look at this term Ifrit from the Encyclopaedia of Islam. I clicked accidentally earlier, so that's why this popped up a little sooner than expected. Ifrit, plural, afarit, an epithet, a name expressing power, cunning, and insubordination. Interesting. So the Ifrit, the Hebrews, right, the Jews, are considered powerful, cunning, and insubordinate. Insubordinate to whom? Well, to God, according to Islam, I guess. At least the implication is there. Ifrit occurs only once in the Quran in the sense of rebellious, the people who have rebelled against God. Later, in its substantive form, it came to mean a class of particularly powerful underground demons or Chthonian forces, formidable and cunning in the popular tales. The Ifrit is a jinn of enormous size, formed basically of smoke. It has wings, haunts ruins, and lives under the ground. Abraham is the first Ivri, and of course, now we're learning about the Ifrit. So this is a race of horrible people. Ifrit may be used of humans and even animals, and then expresses cunning, ingenuity, and strength. In Egyptian Arabic, Ifrit also has the meaning of the ghost or spirit of a person deceased. That's from the Encyclopaedia of Islam. So basically, they are demonizing and insulting the lineage of Abraham, taking this word Ivri and turning it into an insult. Just as they've demonized and insulted Jesus, as I've discussed in previous episodes on my channel, they've simply doing the same with Abraham. And then, of course, claiming him under their banner. Now, why Abraham wasn't Christian or Jew? Slight aside here. We're going a little bit on the sidetrack, but let's understand where some of the animosity towards the Jews derives from. This is due to the Gnostics, and this has been taken into Islam. Don't forget, in the Sharia, in Islamic law, Islam explicitly states it is a Gnostic religion. Now, it may have made a few changes to suit itself. However, it does claim explicitly, and its major scholars all claim to be Gnostics. Let's look at John 8:44. Ye are of your father, the devil. Okay? You are of your father, the devil, and the lusts of your father you will do. Okay? Fair enough, that's the King James Version, John 8:44. So you are from your father, the devil, and the lusts of your father you will do. Fine and well. Now, before Islam, pseudo-biblical Gnostics also reinterpret the Bible. Now, Gnosticism is a reinterpretation of reality. It's a reinterpretation of history. It's a revision. It's not religion, it's revision. By the same token, Islam revises Christian history, revises the Bible. Islam is a revision of everything that came before it as well. It rejects history. Now, John 8:44 has been a source of the Gnostic hostility to Jews and Christians. And of course, many people, Gnostics, Muslims, because of Islam, as well as even atheists, have utilized John 8:44 unwittingly, whether they know the history or not, as a polemic against Jews, especially as a reason to hate Jews. And the history of it is as follows. So the claim is by the Gnostics originally that John 8:44 is a pro-Gnostic verse, with Jesus affirming that the Jews serve the Gnostic demon, the Gnostic devil, the Gnostic Satan, Yaldabaoth. Anti-Semites make the same claims, while ignorant of the original historical source. They seek to undermine the passage and legitimize their stance by asking if John 8:44 correctly reads, as in translated from the Greek, you are of your father, the devil, or is it you are of the father of the devil? In other words, Jews serve Yahweh, and Yahweh, by this reading, is the father of the devil. So the devil is a lesser creation of Yahweh, Yahweh then being the greater Satan. And so therefore, the Jews are from the father of the devil. Right? And the father of the devil would be Yahweh. And therefore, they have reason to hate the Bible. They have reason to hate the Jews. They have reason to even hate Christianity and reason to hate God because of this corrupted translation of John 8:44. Modern scholars still persist in this particular semantic game. Now, using this revisionist framework, Jesus, of course, is not a Jew. He has to be pure. So therefore, he cannot be a Jew. This is why you have these fake Christians, and they do exist. I've seen them in the comments. They'll claim Jesus is not a Jew. Muslims will claim Jesus is not a Jew. Many will do that. The God of the Old Testament of Abraham and Moses, whom we call Yahweh, is therefore Satan, or even the father of Satan, a greater Satan. So, that aside, let's move on to Maimonides. And Maimonides discusses Abraham as a Sabaean. We opened the series discussing the Sabaeans of Yemen, these moon worshippers who had practices nearly identical to modern Islam, according to an Islamic source. It is well known that the patriarch Abraham was brought up in the religion and the opinion of the Sabaeans, ignoble remnants of the nations left in remote corners of the earth, like the savage Turks in the extreme north and the Indians in the extreme south. These are the remnant Sabaeans who once filled the earth. So according to Maimonides, the Sabaeans and their paganism was rampant in the world that he knew. In their writings, Noah was rebuked. So they didn't like Noah. Well, now, of course, you've got the 7 laws of Noah, and people have these crazy issues with the 7 laws of Noah because he worshipped God, and with many other accounts about him. The Sabaeans contend that Seth differed from his father Adam as regards the worship of the moon. These ideas that have made their way into Gnosticism and Islam, and oddly enough, also, without going into any depth here, you have the Sethian Gnostics, and of course, Seth has a position within Islam. Seth also has a position within the Ethiopian Tewahedo Church. Remember the Tewahedo Church, the means the unification, the unity. Right? This is where Islam derives the word Tawhid from, the unification, the unity derived from the Ethiopian Orthodox Christian Church, Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. So Seth differed from his father Adam as regards the worship of the moon. So Seth worshipped the moon. Interesting. When Abraham, who was known as the pillar of the world, very interesting use of the term pillar, appeared, he became convinced that there's a spiritual divine being which is not a body, nor a force residing in a body. The great book on the subject is the book on the Nabatean agriculture, translated by Ibn Washiyah. In a succeeding chapter, I shall explain why the Sabaeans had their religious doctrines written in a work on agriculture. Again, that would be paganism. This would be worship of Mother Nature, worship of the earth, I would assume. Well, we'll get more into that as we go. The book is full of the absurdities of idolatrous people, and with those things to which the minds of the multitude easily turn and adhere perseveringly. It speaks of talismans, the means of directing the influence of the stars, of witchcraft, spirits, and demons that dwell in the wilderness. Well, we've just seen the word Chthonian, and so now we have the idea of these Ifrit, the demons that dwell in the wilderness. And there may be a connection there. And then there occurs also in this book great absurdities which are ridiculous in the eyes of intelligent people. So make of that what you will. Now, let's look at Abraham and pillars. So Abraham and the pillars that Yahweh hates. In Genesis, Abraham and his descendants worship in a manner that includes mentions of trees and pillars. This is in the book Israelite Religions, an Archaeological and Biblical Survey by Richard Hess. Let's look at Deuteronomy 16:21 to 22. I'm using the New King James Version here. 21. You shall not plant for yourself any tree as a wooden image near the altar which you build for yourself to the Lord your God. And in 22, you shall not set up a sacred pillar which the Lord your God hates. Another translation, and do not set up holy stone pillars. The Lord your God hates them. The Sabaeans set up stone pillars. They worshipped these stone pillars. We saw that in the first episode. In the book Genesis and Exodus, we have here, if patriarchal religion corresponds to some kind of historical reality, then presumably this is either some form of a genuinely ancient pre-Yahwistic religion or something that was an unorthodox strand within Yahwistic religion. So now we've got, in this book, an acknowledgement that this idea of this worship of stone pillars, right, this pre-Abrahamic religion, this before he became a Jew, that you've got a form of genuinely ancient religion prior to the worship of Yahweh, and we know what Abraham did prior, or something that was an unorthodox strand within this worship of Yahweh, something that was heretical, right? And it says here, the difficulty with the latter suggestion, right, something that's unorthodox within Yahwistic religion, is precisely the complete lack of that holiness and exclusiveness, which is one of the most fundamental characteristics of Yahwism. So then we have something that is prior. So now we're referring to something that is prior to the founding of the Judaism that Abraham followed. So therefore we have to go back to his Sabaean moon worship. Let's have a look. Now, moon worship is part of an astrological religion, right, which worships not only the moon, but sun, moon, and star. Let's go to Now, there are questions. Is in Iraq or is it in Turkey? There's reason to think it could be either one. Originally, the scholars thought that this was in Turkey. It was only in the 1930s that Iraq became the preferred scene, but there's a story involved in that. And prior to that, it was definitely set in Iraq. It was set in in Turkey. My leanings are towards Turkey, towards the area around Odessa, Haran, and not the current area where it's located in Iraq, my bad. So according to some Jewish and Muslim sources, Edessa, Urfa, is Ur Kasdim, hometown of Abraham. Right, so that's in Turkey. Rensburg points out that this location makes better sense of the biblical references, and this was the reigning opinion for a long time prior to the late 1930s. If Terah, this is Abraham's father, and his family left Ur-Kasdim to travel to Canaan but stopped en route in Haran, then Ur-Kasdim should be north of Haran. Now, 12 kilometers or 7 miles northeast of the city is the famous Neolithic Gobekli Tepe, the world's oldest known temple, from more than 10,000 BC. Right. The area was part of a network of the first human settlements where the agricultural revolution took place, okay, on the Nabatean agriculture. Because of its association with Jewish, Christian, and Islamic history, and the legend according to which it was the hometown of Abraham, Urfa is nicknamed the city of the prophets. So you've got this legend that this is where Abraham, now we know Abraham was there, but this is his original hometown. So in other words, he didn't travel north, but, well, we'll get to that in a moment. Very briefly, without going into much detail, because this in itself would be a very lengthy discussion on its own to look at the evidence on both sides, and my preference now leans towards north, not south. There was more than one Ur. So when you're referring to Ur from 5,000 years ago, which one are you referring to? There are many scattered geographically. Places named Ur are something linguistically close enough to be a candidate for the Abrahamic Ur, such as Ura, have turned up in numerous ancient inscriptions at Ugarit on the Mediterranean coast in modern Syria, at Nuzi in northeastern Iraq, at Alalak in Turkey about 100 miles north of Ugarit, and most recently in the extraordinary archive from Ebla in northern Syria east of Ugarit. This is where thousands of tablets were uncovered, and not all of which have been translated yet. The Ebla tablets include references to a place called Ur, to Ura and Urau. Unfortunately, none of these references can be located with precision, but the find spots of the tablets indicate the cities were most likely somewhere in central or northern Syria or southern Turkey, relatively near Haran. Haran comes up regularly. Haran is where Abraham, or Abram, as he was then called, went with his father Terah after they left Ur in Genesis 11:31. There is no dispute regarding the location of Haran. The Turkish government, interestingly, has denied excavation in Haran by archaeologists. One has to wonder why. The southern Ur lies on the west bank of the Euphrates. Why this matters? When Abraham was an old man, he sent his servant back to the land of my birth, Ur, to find a wife for his son Isaac, Genesis 24:4. Abraham's obedient servant went back to the land of Abraham's birth, and there he found Rebekah, Laban's sister. Laban is the first person to greet Abraham's servant in the Bible. A generation later, Isaac's son Jacob went back, presumably to Ur, to work for Laban. After working for Laban for 20 years, he flees back to Canaan. To do so, he had to cross the Euphrates. If Ur is on the west bank of the Euphrates, as the southern Ur is, it would not be necessary to cross the Euphrates to travel to Canaan. So this in itself is a major disqualifying factor for preferring the northern thesis over the southern, right? And of course, remember we spoke earlier about Ifrit, to cross the river? So there's a connection there. Ergo, the southern Ur cannot be the place that Abraham sent his servant. Now back to Gobekli Tepe. The Gobekli Tepe is one of many tepes. Now Gobekli Tepe, this is the site here, right? This is the town of Sanlurfa. This is Gobekli Tepe, just a few miles away. Technically, it's walking distance. Now, Gobekli Tepe is a site with about 19 or 20 temples in immediate proximity. So it's 19 smaller temples, all clustered together. However, there's at least 19 known locations just like it in the immediate area. So scattered across this geography, there's at least 19 known sites just like Gobekli Tepe, right? Here's just a few of them, right? These are just a few. And recently one was discovered that is said to be even older, something like 2,000 years older than Gobekli Tepe. Right. Well, let me go back. This would be Sefer Tepe, if I recall. This one is apparently even older than Gobekli Tepe, which was regarded as the oldest temple ever discovered, the oldest architecture ever discovered of its type. Let's have a look. This is from the archaeological team, right? This is what they have admitted to, right? So far, this is what they've released so far. I think there's 19 sites on this list. This is Gobekli Tepe, this large one right here. But notice how many other Tepe sites are known, and there may well be many, many more. In other words, this ancient religion, and don't forget, Abraham was right here in this area. Haran is his Urfa, Haran is very, very close to this. This is in this area. Abraham's from this area. He had a prior religion, prior to Judaism, prior to worshipping Yahweh. The Muslims may well have made the connection. Well, we want the religion of Abraham, the oldest religion, the original religion. Well, what was the original religion? Worship of upright pillars, as well as a certain star, right? So now people will say, well, Gobekli Tepe was only found like a month ago, buried under sand. Yes, that may be true. However, there's dozens of these sites. If you read through the blog of the archaeological team, they'll speak of dozens of these sites. Now, they've given us the location of 19 of them, but they claim to have found dozens of these, right? Which means that some of these sites must be known within, even at that time, even 1,000, 2,000 years ago, this religion, or at least the remnants of this, was known, right? It was known to have existed. There must have been some kind of memory, some kind of evidence. Some of these sites would still have been available for people to know about. So this would be the oldest religion, the religion of Abraham, and thus they were looking for this pagan religion. So notice it says here, from a Turkish website, ancient site older than Gobekli Tepe, unearthed in Turkey, discovered at Boncuklu Tarla in southeastern Mardin, are around 1,000 years older than those in Gobekli Tepe. So yes, this is very, very old, and this would make it the oldest religion. Now, let's go back to Jordan. Earlier, we were up here in the Hara, where we found this inscription, this 4th century inscription to Jesus, right? But let's look at a shrine in Jordan, and it's known as a Silim. Notice a Silim is the root of the word Islam. Silim, Esalim, Slim, Salam, Islam, Silim, a shrine in Jordan. Jebel al-Kashbiya, French and Jordanian archaeologists made a unique discovery that sheds new light on daily life and belief in the prehistoric Levant. Graven idols, interestingly, and pillar statues from the Neolithic. This is 9,000 years ago. And this is 75 kilometers east of Al-Jafr in Jordan. So now you are looking at 75 kilometers east. You're roughly in this region here. So you are down here. Petra is a little bit west, about 75 kilometers west of Al-Jafr. So now you have existence of this very ancient, and this is a graven idol. Now remember the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not have other gods before me. Thou shalt not make thee a graven idol and worship it. This is a graven idol. This is a graven idol. These are pillars, the Hanifan, the upright stone pillars. Be upright. Well, here it is. These are the upright stone pillars. And of course, we know that the Sabaeans, the Yemenis, worshipped upright pillars. That idea is very much there. This is a graven idol, right? So, yeah. So the idea of graven idols is present for a very long time, and that memory should still be present at the period that we are discussing. So that would be the original religion. So next I will go deeper into Abraham. We'll look at Abraham and Sarah, and Abraham and his son Isaac, and so on, and Abraham and Ishmael, which will be interesting. So I'll pause here. Hopefully that was interesting, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.